For today's math lesson, you are going to be completing your practice test. This can be found in your Envisions Volume 1 workbook on page 277. It's important to complete your practice test so that when it is time to take your math test, you know what you are expecting. And also, if you think of any questions you have while taking your practice test, you have time to ask them before it's time to test. If you need to pause the video to get out your workbook or turn to page 277, now's a good time to pause the video to do so. If you are ready to begin, then let's get started. Notice how questions number 1 and 2 have 2 parts on them. You must answer part A and part B. For number 1, part A says, which set of tally marks shows the number of hats in the picture graph? When you come to the picture graph, count how many hats do you see? Then find the number in the tally marks. Then you will fill in one of the bubbles to show which tally represents the number of hats in the picture graph. Part B says how many more mitts need to be added to have more mitts than hats. Now when looking at part B, it's important to remember it wants us to show how many more mitts needed to be added so that there are more mitts than hats. It doesn't want to note how many more it would need to be equal to hats, but how many it would need to be more than hats. Then you'll fill in one of these answer bubbles below. For number 2, it says use the picture graph to answer the questions. Part A says, which of the following statements are true? Choose 3 that apply. You do have a question like this on your test, and if you do not answer all 3 of the choices, it does not give you all of the points, so it is very important to pay attention to that. You have to choose 3 of these statements. It wants us to choose which of the following are true about this picture graph here. Let's look at the statements. As we're going through, if you realize the statement is true, then you will check or fill in this bubble here. So is this statement true? There are 2 more penguins than bears. Look at the picture graph. If there are 2 more penguins than bears, that is true and fill it in. If it's not true, then leave it blank. What about this statement? There are 2 fewer bears than penguins. When you look at the picture graph, is it true that there are 2 fewer bears than penguins? If that's true, then fill in the box. But if it's not true, then leave it blank. The next statement says, there are more bears than penguins. look at the picture graph and see. Are there more bears than penguins? If that statement is true, then you will fill in the bubble. If it's not true, then you will leave it blank. Next, it says, there are 8 bears and penguins. Look at the picture chart. Are there 8 bears and penguins total? If this statement is true, you will fill in the box. If it's not true, then you will leave it blank. And last it says, there are 5 more bears than penguins. So look at the picture graph chart. Are there 5 more bears than penguins? If that's true, then fill in the box. If it's not true, then leave it blank. Remember, you have to have 3 of them checked off. For part B, it says a third animal gets added. There are 2 giraffes. How many more penguins are there than giraffes? Write an equation that explains your answer. 2 giraffes get added into our picture chart. They want to know how many more penguins there are than giraffes. So you will need to look at the total number of penguins and subtract the number of giraffes. Then write your answer. So write the equation that shows the total number of penguins, subtracting the 2 giraffes, and write your answer on the line. On our next page, page 278, our directions tell us to use the tally chart to solve each problem below. Part 3A says, Kyla asks her friends a survey question. Which is the favorite winter activity of the most students? So here we have our tally chart that says favorite winter activity. We have skating, skiing, and sledding. Which is the favorite winter activity? Skating, skiing, or sledding? Write the name of the favorite activity in the blank for part 3A. For part 3B, it says, how many more tally marks does skating need to have the most tally marks? Use an equation to explain your answer. For part B, you will need to write the total number of votes that skating has. Then you will need to see how many would you have to add to that number for them to have the most tally marks. So you would need to write 5 to show the total number of skating votes plus blank. That would equal a number bigger than the votes for sledding. So sledding has 5, 6, 7 votes. So if we wanted to make this, let's say, 8 votes, write in how many you would have to add. For number 4, part A says use a tally chart from item 3 to complete the picture graph. So we will need to use our tally chart located here. Part of our picture graph has been completed. For the total number of people who voted for skating, we see 5. So look at the total number of people who went skiing. Count the tally marks and fill in the picture boxes. You can make small X's, you can do a check mark, or if you would like to draw a little sled or a little ski, you can. I would probably just draw X's. Then count the total number of people who went sledding and fill in the same number in our picture graph. Once you have finished writing the total number in our picture graph, it wants you to answer how many students took the survey. You can fill in this equation here to show your answer. Since we are wanting the total number, we know that we are going to be adding. We are going to be adding 3 numbers together. When you see here, we have 3 different categories. You can use the tally chart or the picture graph to add up all of the numbers. Write the number for how many students picked skating, how many picked skiing, and how many picked sledding. Then write your total answer in the blanks below. Once you have finished answering the rest of problem number 4, we will go over our answers. Now we are going to go over our answers for our practice test. If you are still working, which is absolutely fine if you are, go ahead and pause the video so that you can finish up your work. If you're ready to go over your answers, then let's get started. For number 1, part A, it wanted us to show which set of tally marks shows the number of hats in the picture graph. In the picture graph, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 hats. The tally marks that show 4 are choice B. So you would fill in the circle for choice B. Part B said how many more mitts would need to be added to have more mitts than hats. For this problem, I said to be wary of making sure you don't equal them. Don't just add 2, we want to have more than hats. So to do that, you would have to add 3 more for there to be more mitts than hats. For number 2, part A, we had to choose 3 statements that were true about our picture graph. The first statement that was true says, there are 2 more penguins than bears. When we look at the picture graph, we can see that there are 1, 2 more penguins than the bears. The next statement that would be true is that there are 2 fewer bears than penguins. If we look at the graph again, where there are 2 more penguins, there are 2 less bears, or fewer bears. So we would choose those 2 statements. And the last statement we would choose is that there are 8 bears and penguins. If you count the total number of penguins and bears, there are 5, 6, 7, 8. So this statement is also true. For part B, it said that 2 giraffes are added. They wanted us to show how many more penguins there are than giraffes. For our equation, we would need to take the total number of penguins, which is 5, and subtract the number of giraffes that were added. Once we do this, we have 5 minus 2, which is equal to 3. How many more penguins are there than giraffes? There are 3. For our last page, on page 278, Part 3A wanted us to write which winter activity had the most students. When we look at skating, we see skating had 5 votes. Skiing had 3 votes. And sledding had 5, 6, 7 votes. So which is the favorite winter activity? Sledding. So for 3A, you just had to write the name of that activity. So it should all have sledding in the blank for part 3A. For part B, it wanted us to show how many more tally marks does skating need to have the most tally marks. To begin, you would need to have the total number of votes for skating, which is 5, and it needs to be more than the most amount of tally marks. So sledding had the most, which was 7. So it needed to be greater than 7, so we could just change it to one number higher. Then we would say 5 plus what number would give me 8? 5 plus 3 would give me 8. For part 4A, it wanted us to use the tally chart to complete the picture graph. Our picture graph already had the total number of skating, so now we will fill in skiing. Skiing had 3 votes, so we will fill in 1, 2, 3, and you can use X's or circles or whichever you would like. For sledding, we know sledding had 7 votes, so we are going to fill in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, our picture graph is complete. For part 4B, it wants us to write how many students took the survey. We can answer this by either using the tally chart or the picture graph. 5 students voted for skating. 3 students voted for skiing. And 7 students voted for sledding. Now I have to find my final answer. I'm going to solve this by adding 3 plus 7. 3 plus 7 is equal to 10, and 5 plus 10 is 15. If you used a different method to solve, but you still got 15 for your answer, then that is perfectly fine. As long as we all get the same answer, whichever method you would like to use is fine. That brings us to the end of our practice test. What we saw here on our practice test is very similar to what you will be seeing on your real test. If you have any questions about our answers or any of the problems that we went over, please let me know so that I am able to help you before we take our test. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. And I'll see you later.